Let's listen.
In the middle of day one of the impeachment trial, and I don't think it has been a good day for the House managers. We've seen the House managers and Senate Democrats making redundant motions over and over and over again, the same motions that are being rejected. And fundamentally, it is clear House Democrats view this as an opportunity to continue their partisan attacks on the president instead of focusing on the priorities of the American people. The Senate, at the end of the day, will go forward on an organizing resolution that is virtually identical to the resolution that began the Clinton impeachment trial. It is copied almost word for word from the Clinton impeachment trial, except in that instance, the organizing resolution was bipartisan. It was 100-0. Every Republican, every Democrat agreed. In this instance, Senate Democrats are objecting to the very reasonable proposal that was done during the Clinton trial of starting with opening arguments, then having questions from the senators, and then having the Senate choose whether additional witnesses are necessary. We've seen one motion after the other. They've been redundant. They've been making the same arguments. This seems to be a time for Adam Schiff and the House managers to lecture the American people and to attack the president. But, you know, there's an old saying that if you have the facts, you bang the facts. If you have the law, you bang the law. If you don't have either, you bang the table. Well, this afternoon we've seen a whole lot of table banging. And at the end of the day, we're in the same spot we were in when we began the day, which is the House articles of impeachment that were passed on a partisan basis. They don't meet the constitutional standard. And that's why the end of this process, after a fair proceeding, after hearing the arguments of the House managers, after hearing the arguments of the president, the end of this proceeding is going to be an acquittal because the House managers still can't meet the constitutional threshold.
Senator, there were some changes made to the initial McConnell resolution based on some concerns from some of your colleagues. Are you concerned that maybe that signals there might not be unity as you get to the witnesses and documents questions?
No, I actually don't at all. So, for example, one of the elements of the original organizing resolution for the Clinton trial was that each side would have 24 hours. The resolution that we're going to vote on later tonight provides each side has 24 hours for their opening arguments. This particular version said those 24 hours would be over 2 days. And so we saw Democrats lighting their hair on fire, that this is an outrageous effort, a cover-up, to have 24 hours of argument over 2 days. God help us if we have to listen to Adam Schiff and the House Democrats prattle on for 24 hours nonstop. But you know what? I think Senate Republicans did something wise and right, which is say, okay, we'll make a concession. Instead of over 2 days, now it's over 3 days. So you can present your opening arguments instead of up to 12 hours a day for 2 days. You can do it presumably for up to 8 hours a day over 3 days. I promise you, if we are at hour 23 and the House Democrats are still repeating the same partisan attacks against the president, you know, it was striking. Within about 3 hours of these proceedings beginning, I looked up, the press corps was about half empty, and the gallery was almost entirely empty. I have to admit, practically a routine motion naming a post office typically has more people in the gallery than we had today. And I think this is indicative of Senate Republicans giving the House Republicans, or the House Democrats, all the opportunity they would like to present their case, but at the end of the day, it's still not going to meet the legal standard.
Senator, given the redundancy you talked about, do you anticipate the White House will offer a motion to dismiss tomorrow, as is the right under the rules?
I don't. I don't think we're going to see a dismissal, and I think a dismissal is not nearly as good an outcome for the president and for the country as will be a final judgment on the merits. I think what's going to happen, we're going to proceed according to the organizing resolution. We're going to give each side up to 24 hours to present their case. We're going to have up to 16 hours of questions from senators, and then we'll have a vote on whether additional witnesses, additional documents are necessary. If the vote is yes, then this trial could extend for many weeks or even months. If the vote is no, then what I think is likely is that the Senate will vote to move to final judgment, and it will end with an acquittal, with each senator standing and voting guilty or not guilty. And the reason the president is going to be acquitted of these charges is the Constitution lays out a very specific standard for impeachment. Impeachment is not, do you disagree with the president? Do you dislike the president? Do you have political differences with the president? Impeachment of a president is only allowed if you demonstrate that the president has committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And you saw very little today about satisfying that constitutional standard from the House managers. You saw a lot of arguments about how House Democrats disagree with the president politically, but that's not the legal standard. Rather, it's the constitutional standard. And so I think the judgment here is not going to be a dismissal, but rather an acquittal on the merits at the end of both sides having an opportunity to present their case.
What can you say about Leader McConnell's approach to overseeing this process and keeping the conference together?
Look, I think it has been good to see Republicans united. I think it has been good to lay out a process that is copied from how the Bill Clinton impeachment trial proceeded, and that was unanimous. The party that I think is being quite unreasonable on this are Senate Democrats. They're not agreeing to the same procedures that every Republican and every Democrat agreed to with Bill Clinton. And listen, that's a manifestation of the times we're in today. The times we're in today, they're angry, they're partisan. I got to tell you, when I go home to Texas, in my experience, Texans and people outside the Beltway, they're tired of this never-ending partisan impeachment drama, these attacks on the president. Texans that I talk to are interested in jobs and higher wages, in more opportunity. Texans are interested in securing the border and rebuilding our military and defending our nation and defending our constitutional rights. That's what we ought to be focused on. But today's House Democrats and Senate Democrats, their only priority seems to be partisan attacks on the president. To make reference to another time and another organization, I think it's time to move on.
Senator, you may have already said this, but at this time, on that question of whether there should be more witnesses or you would like to hear from more witnesses, are you a yes or a no on that question right now?
Listen, I think the House had an obligation to develop their case, and I think they failed miserably. Now, they heard from 17 witnesses in the House, but it was really striking. Let's take John Bolton. There's been a lot of discussion about John Bolton. Some of the most important argument we heard this afternoon concerned the testimony of John Bolton, which is that House Democrats asked John Bolton to testify before the House. And John Bolton and his deputy, Charles Kupperman, they did something fairly unusual. They went to a federal court. They went to a district judge, and they said, listen, we have two conflicting legal obligations. We have a request from the House to testify, and we have an instruction not to testify because of executive privilege. And John Bolton and Charles Kupperman both said, Judge, you tell me what to do, and I'll follow your instructions. The House Democrats withdrew the subpoena. Rather than litigate it, rather than try to get that testimony, House Democrats didn't enforce the subpoena. Now they're trying to ask the Senate to do the work they should have done. They failed their constitutional burden. It's time to move on.
Thanks, sir.
Senator, just to clarify,